Okay, cool. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to Visionary Souls. So grateful to be here and with a new kindred spirit, maybe an old soul friend after all. Scott joining us from Annapolis, Maryland, which I just learned is only 2 hours away from Brooklyn, which is great. And how you doing, Scott? It's great to see you.
I'm doing well. New
Aw.
York City has a warm place in my heart, and for me, yeah, it's 2 hours. I hop on the train and make the trip up there. I do it often, especially in the holidays.
Oh, it's so cool. Well, I'm really happy you reached out. And for those of you that don't know, Scott is a architect, alchemist, storyteller, and wayfinder. I really like that versus way shower. Let's talk about that in a minute. And Scott is a builder of people and systems, an architect of clarity and alignment forged through real experience. Amen. After decades of leadership across business and life, he now guides founders, executives, creators back to what truly matters. Let's also talk about that, helping them lead, build, and live from a place of wholeness. Let's talk about that. Scott's work lives at the intersection of real life and leadership, where meaning is earned through experience, not titles. Amen. He brings a rare blend of honesty, humility, and wisdom to every room he's in, reminding us that we're never alone, no matter how far we've fallen or how much we're holding. His mission is simple but profound to help people rebuild from truth, lead with heart, and create lasting legacy through community and connection. I don't think I've ever felt so many amens like reading a bio, so that's awesome.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much. What's that like to hear your own bio? I'm curious.
Yeah, it's funny, right? So I've been focused on avoidance here for the last couple of weeks.
Hmm.
Avoidance has been like thrust on me of just all the tasks I avoid and all the things that I put off till later because I don't believe that they're important. And that, which you just read, I just completed, I don't know, 3 days ago. And like you, really, I was like, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to get this done? And like you just did, when I read it, I realized that that's who I actually was, right? For the
Hmm.
first time, I got to see myself that way. And I even tried to pick it apart to say, all right, which part of this is not true? And I couldn't find it. That is the whole story right there.
Oh, I love it. It's so great. And so it just sets everything up perfectly. And you're reminding me of, in some programs I've been honored to run in the past, like it's such a powerful practice to invite people to write their bio, especially as like the future self. And for those listening, I'm sure we're going to be really speaking to founders, leaders, executives today, or maybe budding entrepreneurs. Such a great practice to really revisit, the story that you are telling about yourself. And what if you, just for fun, gave yourself permission to write the bio of who you are becoming, who you envision yourself to be, who you want to be in 10 years, 5 years. I mean, I could even redo that every day at this point. I'm changing, we're like changing at the speed of light over here.
Yeah.
Such a good reminder. So tell me more about how this all started. I mean, it sounds like you have been through some dark nights. That seems to be a theme on the show lately, as always. Like, let's just go deep. Like, when was the big awakening or the dark night that kind of set you more on this path of authenticity and, having capacity to really lead in this way?
So it was a struggle. I mean, I would say it was many dark nights for me, but it was really more when I broke through to the other side, right? And I could point to several different moments, but for me, it started when I started catching myself just saying out loud, "I need a break. I need a break. I need a break." And at the time, I was running a large, small business. I was in process of buying that business. I was in the process of starting two of my own. And I just kept saying, I need a break. I need a break. And then I ran into my 5 year cancer checkup, which for about 12 days, it looked like my cancer had come back and then it didn't, right? And so for the first time, I had an honest conversation with my wife at the table, at the dinner table that night, and just finally shared how scared I was. She shared how scared she was. And then she proceeded to tell me in her own way that I was the missing man in my own house because I was out fulfilling myself in business.
Wow.
And she did not know that I was actually completely miserable in what I was doing and screaming that I need a break.
Wow. I wonder how many people are feeling that way now. I've been there. I've been there multiple times.
Yeah, yeah. it's funny because, especially, well, I won't say especially for men. I think men have it more as a chronic condition, especially when you've worked and you've made it, right? So I'm a turnaround guy. I've worked in major airlines. I was on one of the biggest airline turnarounds in the industry. And then I went into small business and, made a bunch of money in small business and grew and all these things. And I was surrounded by people and I was always alone, right? I didn't have anyone that I could connect with, right? I couldn't tell anyone, hey, this sucks, right?
Mm,
I couldn't tell anyone, hey, I'm hurting because everyone was looking to me, right? I was the source of making sure we all got paid. I was the source of making sure everything was good. And I just had to stay and I hate what this has become, but I had to be stoic, right? Just the one that everyone could count on.
mm,
And it was such a ruse, right? I mean, meanwhile, I was just killing myself, right, in silent suffering, right? And just no one had any idea until I finally started saying, like, all right, hey, time out, time out, time
mm.
out. I'm going too far here.
Do you feel like the cancer diagnosis had anything to do with that?
Oh, it was wild. I wish I was smart enough to say yes, right? So the hook for me was coming out of 2018. So we had a miracle son on the way. He actually turned 7 tomorrow, which is super
Oh,
exciting. Yeah. Yeah, but he's got a almost 25-year-old sister, and I had a vasectomy when she was 2, right? So I had it.
wow.
Yes, I had that vasectomy
They're
reversal.
coming in, whether you want
Yeah,
to.
that's
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I had that reversal, which all men out there don't do it. I've had a lot of surgeries, full shoulder surgery, a kidney removal. The worst was the reversal, but
Wow.
the idea was we'll leave it in God's hands, right? And God can be whoever God is for anyone
Mm,
listening. And the doctor had said less than 1% chance, right? For me at that point, it had been 15 or 16 years. I was in my 40s now. I had been on testosterone for years because I had run myself into exhaustion. And right now, when men go to the doctor and they're low on testosterone, instead of looking to say, "Hey, there's something else going on," right? We just pump ourselves full of TRT now.
mm,
We had every card stacked against us, and he made it, right? He came through, and then he ended up in the NICU. Both he and his mom had a really rough time, but right at that moment, work was turning sideways for me. And the funny part is, it was turning sideways because the guy I was working from was nervous that I was going to get distracted because I was having a baby.
mm,
And I was stopping by my son's NICU bed on the way to the office to make sure that I was doing my part at work. Cancer came just a few months later. I never missed a day of work while I was going through all of the appointments to deal with cancer. I had my kidney removed and I was back at an offsite sitting down presenting 6 days after having a kidney removed. And I went straight back to work. So the first pass through, cancer was meaningless. I was too busy for cancer. I didn't have time to deal with it. I needed to work, right? And now I look at it and I get like shakes just talking about it,
mm-hmm.
right? Because again, like that's such a natural thing. I had a kid in the NICU. I had watched my wife go through a terrible delivery. I find out 2 months later that I have cancer. I have a kidney removed, and I work. I needed to make sure work was good. And I
Mm.
needed to prove myself worthy at work.
I feel you. I really, really do. It's like, oh my goodness. And I wonder how deeply this resonates for others. Even if the physical circumstances aren't the same, just that really deep programming. Like that's how I relate to what I'm hearing. Like it's a programming of like working no matter what and working your way through also as a way of kind of disassociating from maybe pain and
Absolutely.
feelings and like all kinds of stuff that's really calling for deeper emotional attention and presence and intimacy and the proving yourself through being busy, the proving oneself through just showing up by any means necessary, no matter what, being that reliable
That's right.
provider for your family. And I mean, I really relate. And oh my God, like thank God you're here and thank God you're living to tell the tale.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about reliability, and I had written about this a while ago, right? And And let's see how this lands for you because prided myself on being reliable, on being
Mm.
loyal, right? On being the guy everyone could count on. And I found when I really looked back, I was trying to earn other people's reliability in return, right? I
Mm.
expected that if I continued to just put out and be there, that they would do the same for me. I could expect that they would somehow become reliable, right? And you know how
Mm.
that went, I'm sure.
Well, it sounds a little transactional to me, my friend, which is never really a good setup.
Yeah.
When you're unconsciously, doing something with the end in mind, right? Like you're only giving because you want to get something right away, especially if it's unconsciously stated. And then you're setting yourself up for all kinds of disappointment. And people can feel that, I think, more now than ever as we're all just becoming more sensitized, to energy and exchange with one another, we can really feel if there's agenda at play beyond what someone's even saying or doing. We can feel it. Like if they're expecting something of us, we might get that feeling like this is weird or this is off, or it can even be very repulsive, right? Because on some level, energetically, you're kind of hooking somebody in. You're like putting them on the hook to do something for you later that there's no agreement for. So yeah, I could imagine. I mean, how did that turn out for you?
It, not splendid, not
Yep.
really great. Yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
But you know it's funny. So for me, and we talked a little bit about this before I hit record, is I decided that I was the problem, right? After showing myself how everyone else was the problem, right, and pushing out all the blame that they just didn't understand and they just didn't appreciate. I turned inward and realized, oh wait, there's no guns, there's no handcuffs, there's not locks on the doors, right? I continue to put myself in this position and I started unwinding and it started slowly and then I tricked myself there. But the one thing I say is I basically got rid of everything that was burdening me, right? So I just
Mm.
went one by one. Some fell down two by two, and the only thing that was left standing was the only thing that mattered. And for me, that was the moment of real clarity where I stood there and said, now this is a place I can build from.
What was the only thing that mattered? You left me on the cliffhanger. I'm
Yeah.
like, what?
Yeah. My family, right? I mean,
Oh,
it
yeah,
was
of
the
course.
one thing that was here every day
Mm,
when I woke up, when I came home, and that was the one thing that I was going to get to someday or one day. As soon as I had everything else resolved, I would spend my time with them.
yeah, that's it. Ah, just taking that in, yeah, and it's like, oh my gosh, what really matters, right? What really matters? I mean, for everybody, really tune in for that for yourself. Like, what really matters at the end of the day, when the facade of performance and money and job and success and act, whatever we're out there striving for, like, is any of it actually real? And what actually matters? Like, I always think about that. Who are you going to call? Like, when stuff really goes down in your life, when it's really hard and you need help and you need to, like, really rely on someone to support you, who knows you. Like, do you have that support? And, it's like priceless. It's really, I've been through that initiation a few times, and it's through that, guys, kind of what you're speaking about, through the burnout and just the striving and many, many iterations of this. And gosh, and just, end of 2023, I closed a company and had a lot of shame around that, like felt like a big failure because I had built up such an identity in this thing I was building. It was just the source of all my value and worth. And the story was so cool. And who was I without it? And I felt like I was dying, and I actually was in a depression because I just lost touch with, like, what am I doing? Who am I? What am I really here for? I think it's healthy to go through this at times, but it requires a lot of support. Like, we're not meant to go through this stuff alone and get lost in the darkness because it can be really tough when you're letting these old identities go and all the old coping mechanisms, wrapped up in those facades go. It's painful and it's not an overnight thing. And but I'm grateful for that bottom, it led me back to my family. It led me back to my parents in San Francisco. It led me back to, my younger brother was there. It's actually coming up on like a 2-year anniversary because it was Thanksgiving. And there was kind of this big, like, rupture in my family. It's complicated, but book I wrote a book, talks a lot about family trauma and addiction, and my younger brother was really upset with some of the things I was sharing about my experience and how it highlighted, my reality, my truth. And I'm never criticizing people like, oh, you're terrible for what XYZ. I'm just sharing as a way to maybe help other people who have grown up in a similar circumstance and not making anybody wrong, just a lot of compassion for addiction, which runs all over my family and is a part of my experience. But people who have not yet gone through that integration can easily feel threatened or put down or criticized. So, that was going on, and ultimately I had to like kind of be the bigger person and get out of my ego and just apologize, actually, even though a part of me is like, I didn't do anything. But, it's like, do I want to be loved or do I want to be right? Do I want to be open for connection with these people that are my family? Do I just want to put all this stuff aside? Like they're going to be who they are, and I have the tools and resources to just be like, I love you. I'm sorry. You're right. I'm so sorry. Because I'd rather have connection than put them through the hell of trying to like up level their whole consciousness in a day to like but relate in a different way. And anyways, you get it. It's just the complexity of relationships and families up for everyone right now. We're all getting so initiated in our family dynamics because they're the source of who we are and like how we learn how to be in the world. And I guess just to end that story, like, so I had this big healing with my family. It was this massive amends with my entire family. If you could imagine, I made this apology to my brother, and then I had this massive, just emotional release in the kitchen I grew up in my childhood home in San Francisco. It felt like I cried for 20 minutes, and my dad and my brother were just like witnessing me in silence. It was this total shamanic thing. I mean, it could have been 2 minutes. It felt like hours. And then things were different. And
Yeah.
then, I had this incredible reconnection with my family of origin, just total repair, and kind of in this void of like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do next for my career, but like that doesn't even matter because actually I have everything I need, like with these people that love me and they're welcoming me to actually rest. I didn't realize how burnt out I was from years of just running on all cylinders and performing and holding up so many masks. And I just needed to fall apart. And my family was there to welcome me. They're like, you can stay for as long as you want and just rest and recover. Like, we love you. We got you, And in my mind, I was like, I'm a failure. I'm homeless. And that wasn't true. But, that was my ego death was like, I'm really homeless and I'm failed. But my family's like, we love you. We're going to love you through this. And we actually don't care what you do. Like, we love you. We don't care. Like, a job is a job is a job. It's all going to change forever. It's not who you are. They got that before I did, so it just felt like sharing that because it's like the 2 year anniversary and things have been so different. And I mean, yeah, thank you for letting me reflect on that.
Yeah, it's before we hit record, and we tried to stay short before we hit record, but for me, tomorrow is my son's 7-year-old birthday, right?
Yes, congratulations.
Yeah, and it's funny as we were talking, right, and as we talk about someday and one day, right? The one thing that
Mm.
I missed was like tomorrow I won't have a 6-year-old anymore, right? Like
Oh.
that doesn't come back, and again, that's what I was missing right before, right? And I've got an older daughter, and I mean I missed chunks of her life, chunks,
Mm.
2 and 3 year chunks, and again, making it. One of my most popular posts on LinkedIn was about the fact that for a while she was sleeping under my desk when I was coming up at AirTran. She literally would sleep under my desk. I still have the part of the desk cut out where she would draw and write me notes on the underneath of my desk. And I had found it years later when I moved, right? And I was that was the stuff that I was leaving behind, right? And
Oh, that's
to
such a
some
powerful
degree,
image. She wanted to be close to you and she was just right there trying to get your attention.
yeah, yeah, and and it was all to make it, right? All to become, and again, tremendous success, right? I can stand my success up to nearly everyone. Um, but again, that's where I got lost. That was everything that I was, and
Mm.
all with the hope of one day getting back to it. And again, there's no getting back to when she was playing volleyball, travel league volleyball, right? Those are gone. The number of times I didn't get on the airplane on the weekends to come home to see her, right? Every one of those weekends is just gone, right? And for me, I've got a very bad relationship with my my father through my own story of abuse, right? And that sits on the side. But for me, it was resolving my relationship with my oldest daughter, right? She is my heart, right? And I had my whole story of everything that I had done wrong and how I had hurt her and what I had done, and none of it was true. And she had tried to assure me time and time again, hey, you think it's that and
Mm.
it's not. And then one day she just told me, right? And even in that moment, right, I was on this path of I wanted her to make sure she knew she belonged in our family. Right now she's got two young siblings, and I,
Oh.
and I wanted her to know that we were a family of five, not a family of four plus her. And I had this whole plan to make sure she belonged. And we went down to the Keys, and what I actually figured out from that trip is it was me that needed to belong. I needed to put myself back in the story with her.
Hmm. How did you do the repair? Like, what was that like? I mean, I know you're tapping in a little bit, but I'm just very curious about the practicals. Like, it sounds like you had this awakening in yourself and had this awareness start. You were willing, right? You were willing to get honest about, like, wait a minute, what's the reality here? Like, let's look beyond the story, you've been telling yourself, and let's actually like come back into connection. And what did it look like? Did you initiate like just speaking with her and having that kind of conversation? Like, what's your perspective? Like, we all have different techniques and things, but how did you approach the repair?
Yeah, so it's funny. 2 years ago, tomorrow, right, pretty close with your timeline, I did a
Mm.
plant medicine journey, and that entire journey was very simple, and also the worst thing I've ever been through. And it started that as soon as I dropped in, one by one, it took Maddie, my older daughter, away, then my wife, and then both of my younger kids, and that's where I sat. And it was going through all of the other things in my life that I've worried about, spent time on. And it was, essentially offering to, hey, we can resolve these. Just give this some attention and we'll resolve it right here in this space. And my answer was, no, I just want my family back. Right. So for me, that was the awakening. And I mean, it was 8.5 hours of that in all of these things one by one. So for me, it was realizing without a shred of doubt that my family was most important. And my approach with my daughter was something that you said. She got to just sit down and tell me her story, her
Mm.
life story, what life was like for her, where I was included, where her mother was included, and where neither of us were included. And in that moment, it just made me aware, right, that my story about her wasn't even close. Her story about her and how I could now stand next to her in her own story is what changed everything.
Aw, it's so beautiful. I get the sense of just like, yeah, such an opening like into a totally new experience, right? We can create this. We can create a new experience and relationship even with people we've known our whole lives, and we can see them completely differently. I mean, I thank you so much for sharing that. I'm reminded of like my experience and making amends. And, part of my background in healing addiction has been in 12-step recovery, which has like saved my life again and again. And earlier on, years ago, I was making like tons of amends to people that I just would talk about holding in the story of self-inflicted shame or self-righteous anger or just so much martyrdom and like just so much distortion, honestly, that keeps me isolated, keeps me separate, keeps me unworthy, all these different patterns. And then every single time, almost, every 100, probably over 100 amends to people, the response was always like, to your point, like just hearing them, kind of correct my distortion of reality. And then this weight being lifted of all these masks or filters that I didn't even know were blocking our ability to see each other, right? To be present, to be real, to just really see each other. And I would have the experience of people even physically changing before my eyes. Like they would look different because of the energy that I was then able to relate to them in, it's like, and this is the magic of also forgiveness, right? If we, maybe people have experienced this, like when we allow ourselves that permission to forgive someone, and then we can just see them like they're a completely different person, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds so mystic, but the reality is we have all forgotten to some degree that we create an entire world in our mind, right? and we're shocked when we figure out like, oh, I don't know everything about that person. I mean, the number of people that I started apologizing to, I went on my own amends or apology tour, and I had so many people be like, "What are you talking about?
Hmm.
What are you even talking about?" And yet it was the biggest thing on my mind related to that person, and several of them had no idea what I was talking about. I said, yeah, I don't really remember. Maybe that happened, maybe it didn't, but I don't know what you're talking about. And poof, gone, you know?
Right, we're carrying could carry so much weight forever and ever for no reason, just to like keep that old story in place. Because for some reason, it's like even though it's super masochistic, it's comfortable because it's familiar.
Yeah, it's strange.
Oh, I totally get that. Wow. So tell me about the shift into, I mean, service and helping others and guiding founders and kind of integrating. We talked a little bit too about this, like bridging these gaps of, I mean, what, like energy, presence, consciousness, living into business.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny. I've been turning around big and small businesses for as you know now 25 plus years, and as I really step back, it's all about alignment, right? And everyone nowadays, especially in business, everyone points to a book like Atomic Habits. And they talk a lot about in Atomic Habits about making one little change, right? And it's in bike riding and all this stuff. If you make this micro change, it amplifies outward. And it's funny because what people, including myself, had never really understood or looked at is same applies when you're negative out of alignment, right? When you're off just the slightest bit negatively, right, it also multiplies the
Hmm.
same way.
Hmm.
And that is how I fix businesses, right? I go in and I'm referred to as the blue collar executive. I'm the guy with sleeves rolled up and I'm with the front line. Those are the people that I connect with most, right? Because from my standpoint, that's what I always will be. I'll always be the guy out front doing the job. That's where I came from. That's what I'll be. I made it through college. I made 2 weeks in college and I skipped half of it. And I just got to work, right? So I have a tremendous respect for the frontline people. So me, it's about alignment and it's about people. And when you help people get into full alignment, right? And again, it sounds mystic, but people are working right now for their worth, right? To find their value, right? And they've got to find their own way out of that. But if you walk with them through that process and just know what are you trying to prove in your life right now? And again, you're not judging right or wrong. You're just trying to align with them on what is it you're trying to achieve. And you align them in the business and in the role, everyone wins. Right? But so often what we do is that's working for a while until their life circumstance starts to change and they need to prove something new about themselves, right? To whoever they're proving it to themselves, to others. And that's when we start to talk about how people are burning out, right? People are burning out and burning out in my mind is lack of alignment when they are no longer being fulfilled in the role that they were in, even if they were the top performer just last year.
Hmm.
And that's what kicks off all of the pain and suffering. And it ripples through organizations, right? And as a turnaround guy, I had to deal with some of that. And I've been on the side of terminating so many people that just were exhausted. It wasn't working for them, it wasn't working for the company. And I never once thought about that person as the negative, right? I always just looked and said, you don't even want to be here, right? And you could
Hmm.
just see it. But people get so tied into that, right? So that's what I've really carried forward, not only in my own personal journey, but now also as I step really back into business and I'm working on a couple turnaround opportunities now, but it's really bringing the wholeness back in, right? I mean, if you have the people side right and you have the people aligned with what they want to be doing and what the business needs from them, it's almost unstoppable.
Hmm. You're reminding me of like a flashback to when a job I had a long time ago. It feels like a very different reality, but I was working in media at advertising and in New York, and I really just wanted to make more money and I wanted to have a title in more of a creative, like PR centric field because I had been more in the strategy kind of analytics side. And I got this 20K jump and I was communications director, or not manager, not director. And it was more marketing PR, but it was for kind of a analytics company. And anyways, I was there for like 7 months, but I knew right away it was not a good cultural fit. And and I got fired, and I'm so grateful because honestly, looking back, I mean, at the time, it was so horrendous. I was so terrified. But the reality is, for months towards the end of that job, I somehow got mono, which I thought you only got from like making out with someone, but I got it just by myself from stress. And I was probably sitting at my desk looking so depressed and like hated it, but I was just, for whatever reason, so in that conditioning that you're describing of like, I'm here. I have to do this and like, stick it out for till whatever. And I was probably praying subconsciously for someone to fire me. And I was so relieved on some level, but I mean, I was terrified. But that actually set in motion, that awakening, that dark night set in
Yeah.
motion this whole new timeline, where I got sent back. I like was like, oh, I'll go to San Francisco and chill with my parents and just rest and recover from this, burnout I've been, dealing with for longer than I could admit. And during that time, I let, I had all this space and this creativity came back. And that's when I started to write more publicly. I made a blog. I had friends reach out to me and they're like, hey, I need help with marketing strategy. Can you help? And some kind of first consulting deals came in that I wasn't even trying to do. I was just open. I was open and available. And I was more in that authentic alignment, not clouding it with the rigidity of trying to force and go against the stream and try to like fit into this box that I thought meant I would be secure, and just as soon as I was free, I had all these opportunities coming and mostly this writing and this calling to like start writing about what I was seeing and energy and kind of, I mean, the early stages were like just writing blogs for fun
Yeah.
and like writing about my life and like writing about like my favorite routes to go on city like urban hikings and hiking journeys in San Francisco, and but there was an energy to it that was magnetic and people were really like sharing it, and I don't know, it was just something new. And then it led me into this whole awareness of like, what do I actually want to do? Not like, what do I think I have to do to survive, but like, wait a minute, I have gifts and I want to be happy and I want to do something fun and meaningful. And how about I actually shift the way I show up in these like interviews if I'm going to get a new job? Why don't I? And I had support, by the way. I had like a whole team of like support and energy healers and astrologers and people helping me on this path. I was not doing any of this alone. And I was more involved in recovery at the time. And something shifted in my mindset of like reclaiming my worth and value. So I would show up to these interviews instead of like in the energy of I really need a job and anything you want. I was actually interviewing the company, like tell me about you. Like I know I'm awesome. What about you? What are you going to give me? Like tell me about your team and here's what I need to know in order to see if this is a good fit. And it just totally changed the power dynamic. And that led me into my last like full-time job at an agency that I ended up building into a 20 million exit, and it was just, but it was from that kind of moment of being, cast aside from the survival program. It was really, and I had no idea that was to come, so it's just like, it's so important to share these stories of, because then it happens again and again, and you start to build that reference of like, oh yeah, like this isn't the end of my life. Like this is the beginning of something new.
Yeah. It's funny, and it never looks like you think it should, right? So for
Never.
me, I was at the height of my private turnaround experience. I mean, I was cashing six-figure bonus checks almost regularly, right? And
Fun.
yeah, just at a different level. And I started at one point saying I'd rather be homeless, right? Because it was costing me everything. At one point I was in Las Vegas for 6 months, right? And trying to commute back and forth to Orlando, right? And just grinding myself down, right? And again, I was earning and I was doing and we were growing and I was checking all the boxes, but just for no purpose that I could put my finger on, right? I didn't know why I was doing it. And even in my last role, I knew, and I found this the other day, I had written 7 letters of resignation in a 4-year period that I never gave up. And again, like I was disassociating to be there. And it was just like, was I doing it 100%? And I was doing it to the best of my ability. And we were still putting up great numbers. But I was coming home, I was drinking three, four, five, 6 beers a night, and just the unhealthiest I've ever been in my whole life. And that story followed me. And now I look back, and we talked a little bit about this before we hit record, and I've had this moment of after I pulled everything away, and like you, I started writing for me first, right? And I just
Mm-hmm.
needed to organize the thoughts in my head, and I needed to stop narrating them and just let them come out, right? And for me, writing was intensely therapeutic, and I journal often, and now I write every day on Substack. For me, writing serves a different purpose, but as I started to do those things, then I started to realize that I had thrown out parts of me because of how bad times were. The Scott that was part of the turnaround team at AirTran, I threw him out because he hurt his daughter really bad and really messed up his marriage. Right? The Scott at Delta Airlines that had done so much there, I threw him out because that was a real mess. He'd done some real bad things at home for that one, right? The Scott at the first private turn I did, he was a mess. He was a drunk. He couldn't be trusted, right? And I found myself just a couple of weeks ago in my journal at this intersection where there was like four of me standing there, and I was in the middle, and it was this conversation of me. Like I almost felt like I had to pick. Okay, it's time to pick. Like, which one are you going to be? Are you going to go back and be the turnaround guy? Are you going to be the writer? And I had this moment of, no, it's not about that. It's I'm all of those, right? And I reclaimed myself, my whole self, and admitted I want to be back in a turnaround, right? I don't need to be back in a turnaround. I want to, and the bigger the better. And it's not because I want the title. It's not because I want it to be the biggest one I've done. It's because that's what I love to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an entirely different mindset than I need to keep this going because I need to make this work because I need this thing at the end. And I think most people currently, especially in the environment we're in now, are doing a lot of things based on what they need to do.
Yeah.
And doing what you want to do can feel very far out of reach. And I can tell you, I am living proof that it's not that far.
Mm-hmm. Wow, mic drop. Thank you. Yes, and then the need distinction between need and
Yes.
want.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a strong distinction. It's really good to really digest that, because it's just feel into that energy of like when you need something and there's the dependency and there's kind of this like it's a little bit repulsive, like neediness, right? It like doesn't feel great versus like wanting, desiring, choosing. I actually like choosing, right? Like choose, that's what it feels like to me. Like when I really want something, I can allow myself hopefully to choose it consciously. And that's a totally different energy of like direct, like strong, empowering. Like I want to be around people who are choosing powerful things. Like that feels good. So I love that. And I really love that example of that like self family constellation you just did there on your former selves. That is a really good one. I like to do that. And then also the occasional funeral, right? Where we like can also some of these aspects, yes, we can welcome them, integrate, love you, I am you, thank you. I'll take all the good parts and all the wisdom and all the lessons and all the gold. And also like, some of those coping mechanisms or survival mechanisms or yeah, the alcoholism, we can give that a funeral. Like we can fully celebrate and honor that, give yourself a eulogy, like really like because you're speaking about rites of passage and kind of these initiations that so much of our society is really missing, but it's so intuitive for us as ritualistic beings, as human beings. Like we are ritualistic beings. We have consciousness. That's why we're different from a cow. I mean, the cow has consciousness too, but we have ritual and we have rites of passage and in our evolution. And this is missing from modern capitalist society, which is, I mean, we're up against a lot, we're up against a lot to kind of reclaim this wholeness and these parts of ourselves that are just right here, like
Yeah.
screaming for our attention in most cases. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah, it's funny, and I didn't fully answer the question earlier, but but me in service is helping people, right? It's the one thing that I always want to do because it's the one thing no one did for me as a kid, right? As an abused
Mm,
kid, no one came to help me. Everyone had a reason why they couldn't help me. No one actually came to help me, and it played itself out right in the shadow, right in the shadow. I was the people pleaser. Anything you need, you just call
yeah.
me, right? But the reality was I just like helping people, and I really like helping people become who they want to be, right?
Mm,
And when you look at business and the best teams that I've built was everyone chose to come to work and do what they did, right? Because they were connected to the whatever the mission was, they were connected to it in their own way with their own value, and they were performing at a place where they were proud of it. And I mean, if you look at that now, and we were to poll any number of businesses and say, hey, do you work in a place where 50% of the people choose to be there every day, right? 60%. I think most people could probably get to 20s, right? Including the leaders that are there.
mm,
And again, and if you look at that picture across the board, for every human that's involved in that and for every aspect of the business, you want people that choose to be there for whatever their reason is, whatever the business needs from them and whatever they get from the business, right? And again, it's not always money. I was
mhm.
never giving away money to keep a team happy, but they were in a role where they knew they were making a difference every day. And for me, it's in customer service, it's in hospitality, and it's in just knowing that every day when someone goes home, leaves the office, or gets served by whatever the product is that I'm a part of, we've done our job and we've helped them take a step closer to where they want to be or spend the time where they want to be and just be a true part of goodness in their life.
Oh, I love that. Tell me, like, I guess, like, if you're seeing the common threads across teams that you've supported and leaders that you're supporting, what do you feel are some of the kind of like easy access points? You just mentioned a few of them, right? Like helping connect people to that genuine sense of service and meaning in their role and getting clear on what they actually like to do, what they want to do. But is there anything else in terms of like kind of common threads of like getting back into alignment if your business is people aren't really happy to be there. There's burnout and stress, and everyone's affected by all these different market shifts and all the things we're going through and just the turmoil. There's a lot of negativity that people are feeling stressed out by. And what are some ways that, teams, leaders, employees themselves, or even entrepreneurs or like budding teams, like new, I always love to work with people at the beginning too, because it's like you can build in this foundation before things get too big, and then you have a totally different ball game you're playing with when people are with that the alignment is established from day one. I love that. But yeah, what are you seeing as like some common resources to help people snap back into alignment?
Yeah, so there's a couple things, right? And one of them is harder, and then the other one is easier. The hardest one is as I do consulting, I'll always start with just speaking with the founder and then speaking with the core leaders,
Hmm.
how if it's three or four. And I'm always looking, I start looking for alignment, right? The founder will tell me their vision, their passion. And then when I speak with the team, I get their sense of what that is, right? And 9 times out of 10, Scott really doesn't get that. Scott wants this, but what he doesn't see is this and this, right? So you
Hmm.
immediately can start to say, okay, these two things don't connect. But most businesses that I work with, they claim that they're here to serve a purpose, right? And that purpose is whatever it is, right? However grand, however not grand. But when you really peel it back, and when I look at the financials, in most cases, what they're actually trying to do is figure out how to make it make more money, right? And again, there's a difference between running a product or running a service that makes money, and there's trying to make the thing you're doing make money,
Mm.
right? And people lose themselves in that, and again, their promise starts to falter because everyone's working on trying to make it make money, right? Two different things. They're not
Yeah.
working on the promise. But inside of that is something that everyone shakes off because it's the annual performance review, right? That is really, in my mind and my experience, meant for a check-in. And I think probably annually is okay, and you should have an open door to check in more regularly. But to sit down and say, hey, Scott, what's happening with you now? right? Is something shifting in your life that shows itself here? Do you are right? Have you bought a house, and what has that changed about you? Have you
Mm,
had kids? What has that changed about you? Right? This idea that life is going to go on for the people that are doing the work for you every day, and that they're going to stay exactly as they were in the exact same role, doing the exact same thing for the exact same benefits. And benefits, I'm not talking about
mhm,
salary. I'm talking about what's the input they get? What is the performance they put up? What are they contributing to? That stuff changes as people evolve, right? But what we think is, well, Scott did good for his first 2 years here, but man, he has really gone downhill, right? And what do? We wrestle him through it, and it's just the constant fight, right? And then that friction comes in when the reality is you've got to look and say you've had a tremendous career here, right? Whether it's a year, whether it's 2 years, whether it's 10 years, something's off. What are we going to do? How are we going to address it? And again, it starts with an honest conversation of where are you, and how do we better align with you, because we've broke alignment. You didn't stop being a good performer. You didn't stop doing the stuff you did. There's now a misalignment between us, and where is it? Right?
mm.
We always want to blame, and we always want to push, and we always want to find the reason that things aren't working. And we never look first to say, hey, wait a minute, are we aligned here, or has something changed?
Yes, you're reminding me of my last company last year was really immersed in the leadership and workplace transformation space. And it was also with involving AI, which is really interesting to be immersed in that as it was all becoming publicly more available. And gosh, it just really it like validated the sense I've always had in my consulting and advisory work too, around like supporting leaders who are managing teams and who are performing the annual reviews and just conducting these, creating culture essentially. How do we support managers and the leaders to be attuned, to be present, to be aware, to think outside of the box of how they might be conditioned to validate or measure performance in these very kind of limited, cut and dry ways beyond actually having the capacity to see a full person from a holistic standpoint, because they know themselves. You can only do that when you're also treating yourself that way and viewing yourself as a holistic, in a holistic form and understanding your own evolution. And I think that's why I love maybe like you working with leaders. It's so satisfying because when you can help a leader become more embodied, attuned, present, coherent within themselves, then their presence like ripples through their whole organization. Like people just get that empowerment, they get that kind of sense of an example of what's possible. They're learning so much just through the leader's being. And it's the ultimate way to shift culture, So I love that this is coming up. I want to ask you about like, you know, our whole conversation has been, I love all the different threads so far. It's been really nice and just integrating. But I have this sense like we're in such a transformational time of like, what's going on? Like our whole economy in the United States is collapsing, it could collapse, could change overnight. Like I see psychically that we might not even have money in like 5 years, universal income, who knows? Like, and Trump is like out there putting I don't even listen to the news, but sometimes like my guides like show me something and I'm like, is this reality? Is this person like really the president of our country who's like sharing these cartoons or like AI generated poop videos being dropped? Like I don't know. It's so far from my feeling of like the reality I want to live in, like what's on the news and TV and but I have a sense like it's all supposed to change. Like our the way we relate to business, the way we run and found companies, the way we turn around companies, the way we lead, like we need a whole new playbook. People are evolving. We are, opening up our multidimensional senses. Whether you like it or not, people are having like overnight huge awakenings, like consciousness shifts beyond anything we've ever seen. We're all getting blasted by the same light here on this planet. And, it's like, what are we doing? So it just seems like, I wonder what you're seeing in your turnaround business, how you're, approaching these new opportunities. Do you kind of have this sense of like, we're bridging the old and the new, we're bridging the spiritual and the practical, but also like kind of holding right there, like there's a whole new game we're being called to create here. Like, I want to design that, I want to live that, I want to be that, and I have to deconstruct the old programming in my own being around the survival and just capitalist conditioning, all the stuff we talked about this whole conversation, the unworthiness, the martyrdom, the striving for just purely physical means at the expense of what actually matters. I mean, all this stuff, I think it's trying to get deconditioned out of everybody in a way, because isn't there something better we're here to do?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I believe we're in a time, and again, you can just write. Like I posted a Substack post the other day. It was just a note, and all I did, it just said this exactly what happened. I said the American president just said that that people were un-American because they didn't work without pay, and he would replace them with real Americans. That was it. Nothing. I didn't say anything negative
Wow.
about anyone. That was it, right? Just and people were defending it, right? And again, like I have zero inclination on politics, right? I mean, it for me is it's of zero value, and it's all just a show. For me, I think we're all being called to come back to community, right? And community isn't
Mm,
on the internet. Community isn't an online community. Community is back out in your front yards, back out where you belong, back out with the school, right? And close your world back in, right? Where we're
mm,
not focused on problems all over the globe. You know, we've gone too far. Whether the news is true, false, or indifferent, we're taking in too much, right? And that's easy for everyone to say, but I think as we come back in the community, we reconnect with the people around us, right? We have come disconnected. I believe we're in the rise of what I'm calling the heart-centered business, right? And it's funny because right now, when we talk about consciousness, right, and we see people that are doing this consciousness work, whether it's plant medicine, right, or any of the other modalities, and a large percent of them walk away from business, right? And everyone sees it as, oh, they don't get it, right? They don't get it. The reality is that's how much friction is sitting in there, right?
mm,
I sit with, I've sat with hundreds of entrepreneurs, and I mean, I'm talking with that people that are running some of the largest businesses in the US, and they're hiding. They're doing this work in hiding. I went to an amazing retreat in Costa Rica. I've gone to retreats all over the place. And when it comes time to take a group picture, most of the people fade out, right? Because people at the office can't see
mm.
them there, right? But again, like make no mistake, it's happening, right? And
Yes.
and I think a lot of people are going to be on the backside of that stuff. I think so many people are downplaying this return to heart and this return to community, and they're doing it because that's the expectation of the people around them. But I can tell you, and if you really nose around enough and really look and just pick some high level people in whatever industry you're in, they're doing the work and they're not telling you about it.
I love that you said that. So you asked me a question when we first tuned in um this compartmentalization, this is something I faced in my own being, like I like did the exit of my old agency, and part of why I left that agency almost 10 years ago was because I was feeling this inner shift of like I'm this energy healer, I'm doing psychic sessions, I'm having these like super galactic awakening experiences. This is in like 2015, 2016. And then I'm showing up into an office where I'm managing a team and I'm operations director and I'm like doing all this strategy work with big brands. And I didn't feel like I could be myself, I didn't feel like I could really share authentically. Like, how was your weekend? I couldn't share honestly what I did at the retreat. I couldn't. And it was really challenging, but it also lit a fire under me at that time to leave. And I wanted to travel. I couldn't. Part of also the awakening at leaving the old job was like, two of the managing partners and one of the founder, they're like, I think you've taken like 5 weeks of vacation and it's only April. And I'm like, oh, that's true. I think that's like not setting a good example. I'd probably just want to leave and be free to travel. And I did that. And I, got to have that whole experience over many years, like traveling and trying to integrate. And I'm still kind of integrating this now. It's really fresh of like this decompartmentalization, but I did it for almost 10 years. I was always bridging energy, intuition, and business, and knowing that like the true successful visionary businesses needed now more than ever on the planet are going to be led by embodied, coherent, present, attuned, intuitive leaders that have the capacity to really listen to how they're being guided to create the new, right? Because the true innovation and the new technology and all this advancement, it's coming through from different dimensions. It's coming through from higher consciousness. And you can look at all the examples, Steve Jobs. I mean, all these people, they were yogis, they were meditators,
Yeah.
and they were guided. Like Steve wanted to be a monk, and then his Zen teacher was like, "No, you need to go serve the world." And so I love what you're saying, and I'm also just very much in that like right now. And I'm curious how this is showing up for you too. Like right now in this moment, like I just wrote a post on LinkedIn today, like, I've been a clairvoyant energy healer for 10 years. I've trained master energy healer teachers, and deep psychic work that changes people's cellular structure and changes their lives and sets them into a new timeline forever. And I love to do that. And I've worked with, venture capitalists, founders, doctors who've been guided to that training. But aside from my best efforts to compartmentalize as like, I'm over here and then I'm business Sydney who like does startup consulting and, other like more credible business things over here. And it's just I got to throw that all aside, because we're all called to your point, like people are afraid to be in the picture after the retreat or they don't want people to know because there's this old conditioning. And honestly, I think we're just waiting for some really old generations to like move on, so that we can just like get over it. Because I think everyone's just waiting for permission to like come out of the closet, like
Yeah.
come out of the spiritual closet. But those of us, I need to be that example, actually. I'm thrown into a lot of environments in New York, especially. I think that's why I'm here now. I need to initiate and not need. We're not saying need anymore, right? That's a takeaway. I
Choose.
I choose to take the initiative to be out of the closet and be a safe space to model how someone can be highly credible with business experience and strategy and as an advisor in these very practical senses, and also be a highly attuned, highly experienced master psychic energy healer and grid worker and galactic channel and it's all real. And actually, when we fully incorporate all of these different skill sets in one, offering or in business and like with whole teams, I mean, that's what I want to do. That sounds way more fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I've been fortunate to work with so many executives and just on weekend retreats and just spending time together. I mean, we have groups that are doing internal family systems therapy, right? And again, but it's secret, right? It's a secret Zoom and we can't mention who's
Not
in the
anymore, because you're saying it now.
but you look at all of that stuff and you see that momentum. But for me, I was the guy talking from the sidelines, right? I was the guy saying, no, 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 here's what I did, and here's how I'm just like you, except for I used to be just like them because now I'm not in business anymore because I've learned those lessons. And that was a large part of me looking and saying, the best place for me is to be standing in the thick of it and still being who I am. I mentioned this earlier. I write on Substack every day, every morning at 5:30, and it is straight, raw, exactly what's happening in my life, right? It is the story of why I realized that I was projecting stuff onto my wife and snapping at her, why I was feeling the way I did. And it's not about pain and suffering. It's just about awareness, right? And I want to prove not to myself, but show everyone, to prove everyone it can be both. It can be all of these things. I can be just as connected with my heart, and I can still build one of the best businesses around. Right? These two things are not independent. And again, the secret's coming. I know enough. I've sat with enough people in enough positions. This is being worked on, right? And again, in all modalities, your modalities, plant medicine modalities, everything. This work is happening, whether you believe it or not. Executives are sitting with astrologers on a
Hmm.
weekly basis, right? This stuff is happening. They're not going to tell you, but when it suddenly becomes safe, they're going to bust out. And again, if you're not working within a heart-centered business, if you're not leading a heart-centered business, there's going to become a moment where you get lost. And again, I think the heart-centered business is the next evolution, right? We've got AI coming, And again, I use AI for some of my own work. I built this entire journey platform based on all the modalities I've been through, and it takes someone through the whole transformation that I went in through, and it's based in AI. So I am a AI supporter. I've used it well, but people are still going to need to be there, right? AI should be there to make sure that anywhere you don't need a human, AI's got it covered, and AI is doing it efficiently and effectively and on mission. But the minute that a human is needed, that human is there and has every bit of information they need. And by the way, when that human then is done wrapping up whatever they needed to solve, they pump it back into AI.
Hmm.
So AI is more aware going forward of here's what happened, here's where that moved, and here's how we resolved it to build a full ecosystem. People need to be back with people. And listen, we've been through this before. It's still it happened to me earlier. We still fight with the IVR, right? Call the bank and say nine instead of pressing nine, right? I mean, we've all been here before, right? This just looks different. But just like we always used to mash on zero to get to the person to talk to, that's coming, right? And again, it's gonna be a return to heart, whatever heart needs. And then I do want to go back because I keep getting pulled back to what you said. Nearly every business has started because someone was led to start it, right? They didn't get the idea, they were given the idea, whether they were
Mhm.
standing in the shower, whether they were doing it on a run, whether they were driving one day. And it's funny because then all of a sudden, after they're handed that vision, that idea, that plan, they decide that it doesn't matter anymore, it's theirs to manage, right? And they never or they rarely go back and say, hey, the same thing that brought me here, I can use it in my business today. How do I reconnect with my intuition? How do I stop fighting when everything is screaming no and I still go yes, right? When I know doing this next move is not the right thing, but it'll add that extra zero on the revenue number, right? It'll add this, right? People, if is part of the heart-centered business, if people get back to their intuition, they're going to find their way back to the thing that intuition handed them to begin with.
Yes, amen. I love that. You're reminding me. I mean, so I told you about my dark night at the end of 2023. It seems like we have some shared timeline there, which is fun. And, it led me into discovery of like, yeah, what's it like to have what a heart-centered business? Yes, but for me, it's like I actually want God to be my employer. Like that's where I'm at. Because Sydney, the ego performer, dancing out there, I did a lot of good stuff, accomplished a lot, but also burned out because it's like too much to manage. It's like too much for one human. The kind of impact I want to have, it has to be led by something bigger than me. Has to be. And that's been kind of my journey of the last 2 years is like, how do I really trust in source, God? I like God as good, orderly direction,
Yeah,
intuitive knowing,
yeah,
intelligence, and just really like, connect to my business as a being, actually, as like a soul. It has its own soul. It's a living entity. And how can I be in conscious conversation with it? Not as like the manager who's like controlling everything or has this specific agenda. I can have plans and strategy and stuff, but how can I be in more conscious contact with this vision that I was blessed to be the steward of, given to be a guardian for? And like, how does it want to be? How does it want to be in the world? How does it want to serve? How does it want to show up? Who are the kinds of people that it wants to help? What does that all feel like? And then what are the very practical actions to, realize that into form? And again, this is something I kind of conceptually have gotten for years, and I think I used to teach it and share it, but it's like the deeper embodiment, the deeper day to day, like, okay, so how do you show up in your meditation practice? How are
yeah,
you? Keeping your side of the street clean. And I love what you said about community, like really coming out of isolation as entrepreneurs, as founders, to your point about the stress and the burnout and carrying it all. And yes, I do think men have a different burden in some cases as the pressure in our society to be these providers and to have everything figured out. And there's a lot of pressures that you deal with. And it's like, how do we come out of isolation and share, in these especially like founder and entrepreneur circles, and make it more normalized so that we're not just having to go to Costa Rica for the weekend or like how do we build it into our everyday? I mean, that sounds nice too. I'm down, but
Yeah.
build it into everyday life. This has been really helping me in New York, and part of why I think I was guided to come back is to connect with the community in this way. And just to like drop the mask, drop the ego. Like you don't have like none of us are perfect. All of us are learning, all of us are evolving. And here's what I can share. And like, have you been through this? Can you help me? Being normalizing asking for help, normalizing being available for help in a non-transactional way, has been really very healing for me. So, gosh, this has been like a gold mine conversation. Thank you.
Oh, it's yeah, no, it's been awesome. And again, I think these are the conversation. It's time for these conversations to come to the forefront, right? Forget about the next generation of AI and all this stuff. How do we all get back to ourselves and then put the heart back in the business?
Amen. Yes, I'm so grateful to meet you and love to be just stay in touch and be friends. Like tell me when you're
Absolutely.
coming over to New York. Let's like create. I'll tell you one fun idea I had was and maybe this I don't know if this even exists or what, but maybe it's something to even riff on another time or collaborate on. I've always wanted to create a in-person group, and it feels like it's founders, entrepreneurs, coming together to share not just like the big wins and whatever everyone's already talking about on their podcast or their LinkedIn, but kind of to your point, like, what was your biggest failure? And like, what did you learn from that? Or what is like the thing that you're most ashamed of? Or like just kind of these like setting the tone of almost like celebrating our biggest losses and the times we fell on our face and but like learning from it and having this because that feels like the return to that tribal community way of like healing and letting the past go and letting this stuff go and also like laughing about it. Maybe it's a stand-up comedy hour. I don't know.
Yeah, listen, I have some news to share, and it's already happening,
Oh
right?
my
So
gosh, you already did
yeah,
it.
so I am in several, and again, it just this just goes to the secrecy, right? And this isn't about, me breaking secrecy. This is about letting people know that this is happening,
It's
right?
happening. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I am in on signal chats, right? Because they get destroyed after a certain amount of time, right? I mean, we're talking about like
It's
how do we
private.
get yeah. And again, just to do this stuff, right? Just to for someone to say like today is not a good day, right? Today is not a good day, and here's what happened, and I'm suffering.
Hmm.
And again, out in the open. And these are mostly men groups. I'm in a few co-ed groups. But again, like other men in powerful places, in whatever you call powerful, saying, I'm I need help. And not
Hmm.
like send money, not like send resources. Like I need help working through this, right?
Hmm.
I am struggling. But again, if you look at it and it's being done in secret, right? And
Hmm.
but again, those exist. And I think as those bubble up to say they don't have to be in a secret chat anymore, right? And we can all sit in a room and really talk about what's troubling us because the number one thing in my mission is to help people in any way I can, but I am also tired of watching men kill themselves, right? I'm
Hmm.
tired of it. I have lost two friends. I lost one in the last year that with everything, right? Everything was fine, right? I hadn't talked to him in a while. I talked to the guy that had just seen him 2 days before, and everything was fine. And then he jumped off the building, right? And again, I don't know what he was feeling, but I guarantee you I've felt it too, right? And I can also promise he felt all alone in whatever it was. And that's the signal I send out every day, right? And I don't try to be, I try not to hold anything back because anyone that reads it, I just want them to know, even for a flash, you're not alone.
Hmm. Thank you so much for that. And that you reminded me of that acronym, FINE. I'm fine. Fearful, insecure, neurotic. What's the E? The E is like something I forget always. But it's like I'm fine. And it's like, are you fine? Are you really? I don't know. And thank you for that example. Just that's something we can all take away. How are we being that um, just open source reminder, that we're not alone. We're here. We're sharing a planet, and everyone's going through it. Everyone's evolving and going through so many awkward, weird transitions, and you just never know what people are holding, never know what people are going through, and how heavy the mask is that they're holding together, and like how can I be compassionate, and I can only be compassionate for others if I'm really taking care of myself. I can only really serve from overflow, and so it's in service to everyone when I'm really well cared for and managing my energy well and not burning out and not suffering, and I'm really taking that away from our whole conversation. So thank you. It feels like that is landing even more deeply, and that is such a gift, and that it feels really very timely and just take a nice deep breath. So, what else is happening for people that are listening, and our amazing visionary souls listeners, and maybe new friends that are going to connect in this space from these bridges we're building? What are invitations that you have to, work with you, to collaborate, community, building the village? What's happening?
Yeah. So I've got several different avenues, but probably the best way to go is one of two ways. Is just go to scottfasano.com, which is my personal website, and that'll branch anyone off based on what they're looking for. I've got Defy Tomorrow, which is my work and just the personal transformation. I've got a journal in there. I've got some journeys in there, which are all AI assisted that use every modality that I use, except you don't have to go through the pain that I went through. I mocked it up and I used AI to help that happen. And then there's the business me, right? Which is where I just come in and help you with your business, right? And that's what I enjoy doing. I enjoy doing all of it, but business is fun because
Mhm.
with business, we're taking care of people on the other end. We're providing for the people that work for you, and we're bringing your life to vision. And then there's me, and I'm the most expensive one. And for me right now, I'm looking for a 12 to 18 month turnaround. Right now, the big word is scale, right? Can you operate at scale? And what I've said is, I'll take my worth times your scale. Let's do it, right? But I've got a few things in the fire there. And for me, if people just go to Substack and check out my Substack, and I'll shoot you the link, I'm just a guy that's just telling the truth every day. And
Hmm.
the one thing that I'll say in all of this is there's a lot of ways to get through this, but what truth are you avoiding today, right in your life? And when you start looking at it that way, it changed my whole life. I did this by simply telling myself the truth every day, whatever that truth was. And it's the funniest thing the way we think we're fooling ourselves, right? If we can all admit, I mean, nearly 100% of men I sit with go, "Oh yeah, yeah, I totally lie to myself all the time. It's the only way it works." And then you
Hmm.
look at it and go, and you don't think that that's burdening the system at all. Like you are trying to hold yourself from knowing something that you already know, and you don't think that that's bringing you burden. So I've got a few resources there, but again, you don't need anything that I have to sell, right? You can find your way, and from my experience, it's with the truth, it's with admitting the truth, and you don't have to tell everyone around you. It's better to have a group around you, but if you start with just sitting down with yourself and letting yourself realize and know that you already know the truth and it's not going to hurt more than what it does, you already know. So just
Hmm.
let it out. And we talked about release earlier. Most of this is just letting it go, right? Because
Hmm.
it's that lie that you're holding is not a lie because you know it. So just let it go.
Yep. Clean the slate of the past. You can let it all go. It can be present. You can have support. You're not alone. And it's meant to be fun. I think we're all
That's
meant to
it.
have a
Yeah.
lot more fun and really enjoy what we're doing. I mean, fun is kind of my main barometer of alignment. When I'm really in alignment with my soul and vision and genius, it's like really fun and things are flowing. So I like that.
It changes everything. People are starting to talk about flow state, which now is very exciting, right? As a writer,
Yeah.
you've probably entered it soon. I mean, I wrote an entire book, and it was as though I had written the words before, right? That level of flow.
Mm.
But that is starting to become a thing, right, in
Hmm.
business, right? When you can truly achieve flow state, right? And again, that sounds mystic. Look at Michael Jordan, right? For anyone that's doubting, go back and look at some of your favorite moments in sports, right? Wherever they were, that person was in flow state, right? And it's not reserved for them making that play at that moment, right? That is available for all of us, right? And it's time for people, and again, with reconnecting the consciousness, you have that intuition that you know you have, by the way, and you ignore it still. You know you have an inner knowing that you ignore, which is just silly. But the other thing is when you're having fun and when you have your guard down and when you let your hand off the wheel, you don't careen off the side of the road, you fall into the thing that's bigger than you. And the thing that you actually turn to when times get real bad, you'll end up back there. If you dial into it now and just really learn how to trust it, it'll change everything, including your life, including your business, including your relationships. And it's fun and it leads to conversations like this. You and I have never met and have so much in common, right? And now we're like, all right, well, when are we getting together? I mean,
Aw.
it's remarkable to look at the alignment between you and I, and to honestly say we shared 3 emails and had this conversation,
No, this
and
is
look
how
at
it
the alignment.
is. But
Yeah,
this is also how it is, and we could just keep mic dropping all day long. But I mean, it's
it's
like
everywhere.
this
Yeah.
is this is a very present guidance I've been receiving lately. Is like and it sounds almost like silly to say it out loud, but it's very real. Like you literally never know who is going to show up in your reality and change your life, and it could be anybody, like the person at the store. Like you just never know. You never know, especially now. I feel like we're on a fast track of these reunions with soul family collaborators from other lifetimes. Even if I didn't meet you in this life, you're very familiar. Like we've hung out before in other times, I'm sure. And we're meeting each other more now at this accelerated pace because we're here to help each other. And you just never know. And these people might look totally different than who you might imagine yourself to associate with. Just like drop the judgment. Have discernment, right? But when you feel that resonance, which you can feel through an email, you can feel through a text. Like we can feel these, we know, we remember. And you never know who's showing up trying to help you. Don't block it.
And, and you find it in community, by the way, right? Not
Yes.
right. That
Yes.
that get back to community. And again, that community can be anywhere. It's not social media, right? It's community with people on the other end. It's community sitting with people. And again, like you, I had to put up a bunch of boundaries, and now every day someone new walks into my life where I just look at them like, man, what a blessing that person is. That I never would have given a chance otherwise. And
Yes.
I'm surrounded by them. Every week, at least 2 or 3 new people show up, and I'm, man, and you know what? And they're saying the same thing back to me. It's here and it's alive. Come
Mm.
out and join us, I think is the message.
Join us.
Love it.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Scott. Such
Thank
a
you.
pleasure. I'm really serious. We'll grab a bite when you're in New York. I'd love to connect and just hang and share more story. We could talk forever. And
Right.
really grateful for this episode and for everyone listening. Just I really hope that this was nourishing and just like a feeling of, authenticity that you can take with you and that you can just feel what it's like to be in a space of, presence. And where do you bring that into your world more? How can you also tap into some of the practices that we shared? I love that we brought through some very practical action here. It's so fun. I love that. And I'm just leaving with so much gratitude and a lot of optimism and reminder that, like, yeah, it's all meant to be fun. And like this life, to be alive in this physical, weird body with consciousness is a game. And I never know, like, the other players that I'm being set up to me and what we're going to create together. And it's meant to be fun and easy and abundant. And like, yeah, we get to grow and change, but there's support and there's deeper love and that's all fun. So I'm just really leaving with so many gifts from today, and I thank you so much for your presence and look forward to seeing what comes from the ripples here.
Me too, and thank you as well. I mean, for I'm just just so grateful, right? And again, I was like, hey, if you don't have time today, and you said, hey, let's stick to this, and
Today's the day.
yes, I am incredibly grateful. And again, just if you're listening to this, it's just two people having a conversation, and none of this was scripted. And here we are, and I think it's available to everyone any day, anytime.
Amen. See you next time, everyone. Love you. Take good care. Thank you so much for your presence. See you soon.